Alors, bonjour et bienvenue à tous, and welcome to the launch of Iran Accountability Week, la semaine de responsabilisation de l'Iran. Mon nom est Erwin Cutler, je suis député de Montréal, et je suis accompagné aujourd'hui, and I'm accompanied here today by my fellow colleague MPs, all involved in Iran Accountability Week. We have with me here John Weston from the Conservative Party, who is also the representative to the Iranian Canadian community. Wayne Marsden from the New Democratic Party as vice chair of the Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on International Human Rights, and Marc Garneau, foreign affairs critic for the Liberal Party. I want to say that this particular Iran Accountability Week comes at a very important moment. While this is our fourth annual one, it may be the most important one. It comes at a time while the nuclear negotiations are proceeding, may yet conclude with an agreement between the P5+1 and the Iranian government. But these negotiations have tended to overshadow, if not sanitize, the Iranian regime's massive domestic repression. Now joined by James Bezan, also of the Conservative Party and a co-sponsor of Iran Accountability Week. These negotiations have taken place, I said, while there is massive domestic repression in Iran. Very quickly, this repression includes an unprecedented execution binge. In the last 2 weeks of April, there's been the highest rate of executions of any comparable period, and regrettably, it has gone unacknowledged, if even known. At the same time, we are witnessing, and perhaps important to mention this on World Press Freedom Day, an ongoing criminalization of dissent in Iran. We have also the 7th anniversary of the imprisonment of the Baha'i leadership and the continuing persecution and prosecution of the Baha'i. And of course, in speaking of political prisoners, we have more than 900 political prisoners in Iran, which include women, human rights defenders, leaders of ethnic and religious minorities, journalists, bloggers, trade union leaders, students, and the like. In a word, the leaders of Iranian civil society, many of whom are also even threatened with execution, which includes the political prisoner that I represent, Ayatollah Bourjedi, the senior Iranian cleric who, as we meet, is being denied urgent medical care. He's in his 9th year of imprisonment for doing nothing else but advocating religious freedom and adherence to the Universal Declaration, UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And this brings me to the final point, and what I wish to then turn it over to my colleagues. The centerpiece of Iran Accountability Week is the Global Iranian Political Prisoner Advocacy Project, where MPs take up the case and cause of a political prisoner in Iran and advocate on their behalf. Each of my colleagues here today has taken up the case and cause of a political prisoner. I'll now turn it over to them. They will speak respectively on behalf of each of their political prisoners. Because there's another vote coming, we will have to abbreviate our own presence here today, but we are delighted that you've been able to participate with us, and I'll start with James Bezan.
Thanks, Erwin, and it is important that we're here talking about the continued persecution of political prisoners in Iran. And I'm going to be advocating on behalf of Dr. Omid Kokabi. He's only 33 years old, and here's an individual that's extremely well educated, was one of the top students in Iran when he graduated back in 2000 from the Sharaf University, ranked 29th overall in the entire science program across the country, and went on to get a master's degree and a PhD in Spain at Catalonia, and then was studying down. He also went to Barcelona, and then was studying at the University of Texas in 2010. He made the decision to go home to see his family in 2011 and was arrested and has been sitting in the Tehran's Evin prison ever since, which is one of the most brutal prisons in the world. He has been tortured. He's received solitary confinement. He's been forced to confess to crimes that he never committed. And, his health is failing. He's had an unfair trial in the Revolutionary Court, and that was actually overturned last year, but then reinstated again by the government of Iran. So we call upon his release, make sure that his serious health problems can be looked at. And again, it comes down to that President Rouhani, as Erwin already pointed out, has continued to go out and actually increase the number of political prisoners that not only are arrested, but are executed on a monthly basis. He makes Ahmadinejad, almost look, softer, which was hard to believe because he was so out there and in his rhetoric and his statements and his brutality with the people of Iran. But we're not seeing, any changes in how Rouhani is running the country. And we also must remember that it was Rouhani who was in charge of the nuclear program during the first interventions to get Iran to remove themselves from their nuclear weapons ambitions. And now, as president, I am concerned, I think everyone is, that here's the individual that is negotiating on behalf of the country with the P5+1 and not willing to make any major concessions. So with that, I'll ask John to come up next.
My name is John Weston. I'm the Member of Parliament for West Vancouver, Central and Coast Sky Country, and the government liaison, the first ever government liaison to the Canadian Iranian community. C'est un grand honneur d'être ici, and I want to shout out to Erwin Kotler because, Professor Kotler, what you're doing here is you are creating common ground among Canadians and enabling us to do what we do best, which is to reach out and to stand in unity with people around the world who are oppressed and to make a very large and clarion call for human rights. So I thank you for getting us together. It's very important that there's members from each party here, each party, official party in the House, and we stand truly for all Canadians. So thank you, Erwin, for what you've done. There's a great 13th century poet, Sadi, who wrote the poem Bani Adam, the poem which is inscribed on the walls of the United Nations building. And he says, when a person anywhere feels pain, we all ought to feel that pain. And furthermore, he says that if you don't feel that pain, you're not even a human being. You don't deserve to be part of the circle of humanity. Well, that was a very strong statement, and it's one that we all reiterate here in our various ways. There are hundreds of political prisoners in Iran who all deserve to be mentioned. In the sense of Sadi's poem, there isn't really one that is more deserving of our mention than another. But it's useful for us to put faces to names and to personalize this campaign. My friends Nazanin Afshinjam, Mehrdad Rabar, and others who fight for freedoms of Iranian people all agree with this sentiment. Let me recite the story of one person in Iran. Unfortunately, it is a real-life story, and that is Behnam Ibrahimzadeh, a workers' rights advocate and a champion of the rights of children and other human rights in Iran. And I've relied on Ms. Afshinjam for the following information. As Behnam's father, Rahman, recounts, this past Nowruz was the 5th for the family without Behnam by their side. He is in Ward 2 of Rajai Shar prison, otherwise known as the Al-Quran prison. And he's been there for some 5 years. He was originally sentenced for 20 years, but after a huge public outcry, his sentence was reduced. However, as his sentence was coming to a close, Judge Salavati from Tehran's Revolutionary Court resentenced him to 9 years and 4 months on brand new charges of colluding with the People's Mujahideen, a banned opposition group, and spreading propaganda against the regime by contacting Mr. Ahmad Shahid, the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the Islamic Republic of Iran, who will be with us today as part of Iran Accountability Week. Bezan was categorically denied any connections with the Mujahideen. But it's impossible to prove absolutely a negative, and he's running into the roost used by oppressors since time immemorial to trump up a charge which a defendant simply cannot refute. Not only is Bezan wrongly detained, but he's also suffering from physical privation in prison, including long periods of solitary confinement. The results include arthritis in his neck and intestinal and kidney bleeding. Prison authorities deny him medical help or even painkillers. Sadly, Bezan's only child, Nima, suffers from leukemia, and the Iranian authorities deny any visitation for Bezan with his family and child. Bezan's family thank peace-loving human rights advocates in Canada, in Iran, and around the world for our support. And we together believe that continued pressure on the Iranian authorities increases the likelihood of relief for Bezan and for many like him. Sadi would cheer us on. And I'll introduce my colleague Wayne Marston of the New Democratic Party.
As you've just heard, I'm Wayne Marston, the Member of Parliament for Hamilton East Stony Creek, and I'm also the human rights critic for the official opposition. And as Erwin said, we, in a way, have adopted particular prisoners, not to the exclusion of anyone else, but some that just stand out. In Canada, we're blessed with the ability for unions and workers' organizations to critique our government in the democratic process. I was 28 years in the labor movement, and in the democracy we have, as you can see, I was able to aspire to be a member of parliament and to succeed in coming here. The person that I'm speaking for today is Mr. Reza Shabadi Zakira. He was the treasurer of the Syndicate of Workers of the United Bus Company of Tehran, and he's serving a 6-year sentence. Like so many others, especially in Evin Prison, he's suffering poor health and is still not clear whether he's received any treatment at all. He was sentenced to 5 years imprisonment for gathering and colluding against state security and 1 year for spreading propaganda against the system. And he was sentenced by the Revolutionary Court in Tehran. He's also fined 70 million rial, which is approximately $6,000, and banned from trade union activism for 5 years. Amnesty International, in their view that Raz has been convicted solely for his peaceful trade union work and is a prisoner of conscience. And I think the importance is for all of us around the world to understand that there's people for personal reasons stand up to regimes such as in Iran, and they pay a tremendous cost. So I'm glad to participate in this, the 4th annual Iran Accountability Week. Thank you.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Marc Arnaud, je suis le député de Westmount-Ville-Marie et je remercie mon collègue Erwin Cutler pour l'initiative qu'il a prise cette semaine d'imputabilité de l'Iran sur la question des droits humains. Ces jours-ci, on parle plutôt de l'Iran sur la question des armes nucléaires et aussi de son implication dans la guerre en Irak. Mais il ne faut pas oublier, il ne faut surtout pas oublier les abus des droits humains qui se passent en Iran depuis bien des années. J'ai l'honneur de parrainer quelqu'un qui s'appelle, une prisonnière qui s'appelle Mariam Shafipour, une activiste étudiante qui a été trouvée coupable l'an dernier. Son seul crime, c'était de s'exprimer, mais qui subit en ce moment une peine de 7 années. Alors, elle sera en prison pour un autre 6 ans. Je crois qu'il est important de tenir cet événement parce qu'on peut quand même envoyer un message à tous ceux qui vivent en Iran qu'il y a des gens en dehors de l'Iran qui se préoccupent des droits humains et qu'on pense à eux et qu'on essaie de changer les choses. Merci.
Merci, Mark. And our last representative on behalf of political prisoners will be the leader of the Green Party, Elizabeth May.
C'est un grand honneur pour moi d'être ici parmi mes collègues parlementaires dont le cause très juste pour les droits humains. I'm very honored to be here with my friends to talk about Iran Accountability Week and to focus on human rights in Iran and on particular political prisoners. I want to talk about, as the only woman federal party leader, I'm focusing on a woman held in prison in Iran. She, like me, has turned to hunger strikes, although I never had to go on a hunger strike as a result of being in prison. But Atini Farghadani, who is an artist and a prisoner of conscience, has been held since January under the charge of, quote, propaganda against the regime, undermining national security, and insulting members of parliament by depicting them in cartoons. We all stood in solidarity as Je suis Charlie Hebdo. We stand in solidarity with Atina Farghadani. We call for her release. These are spurious charges. These are chill against artists and prisoners of conscience who should be released. Thank you very much. And again, I want to pay tribute to my dear friend Erwin Kotler, who is in this House of Commons is the beacon for human rights. Thank you.
Do we have any questions? No? Okay, I think we'll... Do you have a...
What do you think?
That's only... Okay, and I know that we've got the bells about to have another vote. I just want to say that one emergent news item which will be relevant to all of us and the Iran Accountability Week, we've gotten all-party agreement to have a take-note debate, and the take-note debate will be next Tuesday evening, May the 5th. That will give each of us an opportunity, those of us here, to speak even more fully that evening. Those who are not able to be here, we will have a debate in which every MP who's taken up the case of a political prisoner will be able to speak to that case and cause on that evening, as well as speak to the entire composite of Iranian threats and our hope for the improvement of the human condition in Iran on behalf of the Iranian people. And we are here in solidarity with all those who have been tragically the victims of domestic repression in Iran. Merci.